I need to get that slip.
All right, so here we go. The height of a ball above the ground is given by this equation. Find the maximum height of the ball. Now, get Moses. Come on, we gotta get done here. We want to do well on this test. Erica and Savannah. Now, this equation, I know has different letters than usual, but it's a squared equation. And squared equations have what shape? Parabola. And because there's a negative out there, this is a parabola that opens down. Now the question says, find the maximum height of the ball. Wouldn't the maximum height be the vertex? And we have a formula that helps us find the vertex. What's our formula? X equals negative b over 2a. For our problem, that would be t equals, because we don't have x's, we have t's, t equals negative b. What would negative b be? Negative 64 over 2a, negative 32. 64 over 32 is 2. So this parabola has a vertex with an x that's 2. Now how do I find the y? Plug the 2 in. When I plug it in, remember, we square the 2, not the 16. So that would be negative 16 times 4 plus 64 times 2 plus 6. So that's negative 64 plus 128 plus 6. Is that 70? So now we need to answer the question. Find the maximum height of the ball. Well, there's 2 numbers here. What does the 2 stand for? That's the time. So that's 2 seconds. Does the question say when does it reach its highest point? Nope. It says what is its highest point. What is the actual distance? 70. I made up the feet. It doesn't say in there, but it's 70 somethings. Feet, inches, miles, something. All right, everybody got it?
Wait.
Moses?
I can't see the board, but basically what you're supposed to do is you got to find the x and put the x back in to find the stuff.
Because you're finding the vertex. You want to move over here, Moses?
I won't make much of a difference.
Okay. If x minus 3, negative 64, 128, 64, 64 plus 6 is 70. Get your calculator out and check it. Okay, if x minus 3 is a factor, find the other factors.
Oh, never mind.
All right, how do we do that? What do we do? Lindsay? Yep, we just divide. So we're going to divide out the one they give us. And did we expect that to happen? Yes, because it says x minus 3 is a factor. That means it divides in evenly. So then what do I look at? Well, the quotient. And what do I do with that? That's x squared plus 4x minus 5. What do I do with that? Factor that. Now, be careful. It says, what are the other factors? b's on the other factors. So you factored it to get the factors. Okay? Now we're going to use synthetic division. We're just going to do a division problem. Okay. What's tricky about this division problem now? It's missing the fourth. Oh, it's also missing the squared. Oh wow, that's a double trouble. When you're doing the division, remember all the powers have to be there. If they're not, you need to put in zeros. So that one's going to have 2 zeros. You with me? Okay. Now, everybody okay with putting a 1 out in the box? All right, we're ready to divide then. Here we go. Bring the 4 straight down. All right, now I don't know. You double check my arithmetic. Now, on the test, I'm going to have you, I don't know why I didn't hear, but you're going to do the quotient and the remainder. Okay, so what would the quotient be? Watch it. This is the remainder. What's the quotient? 4x fourth plus 4x cubed plus x squared plus x plus 10. That's your quotient. Why did I start with 4x and a fourth? Because it's always 1 less than what I had to start with. So far, so good. All right, number 4. We're going to write the equation. Okay, so how do we start? What do we start with? We have to write the equation. Look at the picture. Yep, very good, Lexi. I start with the parentheses, with the factors. So she said x plus 2, x minus 3, and minus 5?
Yeah.
However many dots are on the x-axis, that's how many parentheses you're going to have. But before you go on, you got to stop a minute now and look at the picture. Do any of those bounce off?
Yes.
The x plus 2 bounces off, and the 5 bounces off. Everybody see that in the picture? Now, you've got half credit at this point. That was easy. What's the last thing we have to do? We got to figure out what this number is right here. And how do we figure that out?
Look at that point.
Take the other random point in the picture, put in 6 for the y, and 1 for all of the x's. 6 for the y, and 1 for all of the x's. Jennifer? Well, we don't know. We have to figure out what that number is. Okay? That you're not graphing it, it's already graphed, so you don't even need to worry about that. Your job is to come up with the equation. So, 1 plus 2 is 3 squared is 9. 1 minus 3 is negative 2. 1 minus 5 is negative 4 squared is 16. What's that going to be? 288. let's reduce that. So let's see, 2 goes into both of those. And actually 3 goes into both of those. So you got a negative coefficient, Jennifer, just like you knew was gonna happen because it started up. But your job was to figure out what that coefficient was, so we just did that. So this is your answer. Let's see. All right, page 1 down. Everybody okay? Consider this problem. List the possible rational roots and find the roots. All right, let's make our list first. What will our PRRs be for problem number 5? Plus or minus 1, 2, 4. Factors of 4 over factors of 1. So 1, 2, 4 plus or minus. Now, you need to find them. You need to find the roots. So I've got it set up because this is where I guess, right? Does 2 work? Plus 5 is 2. It's 2.
Wait.
Yep, 2 works. Now it says, find the roots. So one of your roots is 2. You're not graphing it, but if you were going to graph it, you'd put 2 on the number line. How do we find the other ones? What do we do now? We take what's left, which is x squared plus 4x plus 2. What do we want to do? We want to factor it, but what? You can't. So we do the quadratic formula. So x equals negative c. Now, those of you that don't want to do this, I'm sorry, it's just part of it. Am I okay so far?
Take out 2.
Now, the square root of 8 does reduce. How does the square root of 8 reduce?
2 root 2.
2 root 2, very good. And now, do you notice your triangle there? You can cancel all 3 places. So we end up with negative 2 plus or minus root 2 over 1. There are your other 2 answers. So we have the 1 that we get, the 2, and the number 2, which is the one we guessed in the beginning. That's our first answer. Then we divided and took what was left and solved it. If it factors, great. If it doesn't factor, then we had to use our quadratic formula. Number 6 is another factor problem. This time we're going to factor and sketch. Look at this problem, kids. Do you notice anything? It factors by grouping if you want to. If you notice that, That's always faster. So if you notice that it factors by grouping, what are you going to take out of the first two? What can come out of the first two? X squared. Good, thank you. Leaving me with x plus 5. What can come out of the last two? Leaving me with x plus 5. Is your hand up, Moses?
No.
So we have our common factor, which we write down. We don't square it. We don't do anything. We just write it down. And then we have x squared minus 4. What about x squared minus 4? Plus 2 minus 2. Good. Now we can sketch it. Where will the dots go? Negative 5, negative 2, and 2. Is anything squared or repeated or anything in this problem? So we just connect the dots. Any issue with that? Now number 7 is another sketch, but it's already factored for you. So you're just going to start right in putting dots on. Where are the dots going to go? At 1, at negative 4, and at 3. If you times all that together, what would be the degree? X to the what if you times it all together? X to the 5th. 5th is odd. Start down and up. Unless there's a negative, there's no negative, so I'm going to start down. Now what do I have to be careful of?
Bouncing.
When I get to a point, am I bouncing? When I get to the negative 4, do I bounce? No, because that came from the factor x plus 4, right? So I just go right through. Now what about when I get to the point 1, 0? That came from the squared factor, so it's going to bounce off. This one also came from a squared factor, so it's going to bounce off. And there is your picture. Jennifer? When it hits that, it bounces back in the same direction it came from. So if it's on top, it's going to stay on top. It's not going through. It's going to bounce off. Just like a ball bounces up. It doesn't go through the floor. Pressure varies inversely as volume. Uh-oh, pressure varies inversely as volume. What is your general format for inverse variation? Y equals K over X. But for us, it's P equals K over V. Agreed? If the pressure is 80, when the volume is 16, or the pressure is 80 when the volume is 16. So can we find K? What would K be? 80 times 16. 1280? Now go back to your equation. If K is 1280, then P is 1280 divided by V. Find the pressure when the volume is 40. Can we do that? Two.
How do you know the equations at the top? Is that just like?
We memorize it?
Memorizing?
Yep. We talked about this yesterday, Jake. We had them both on the board. This is inverse variation. This is direct variation. You have to know them. Bless you. All right, next. Find the possible rational roots, find the factors, and sketch. Okay, so we have a lot to do. What are the possible rational roots of problem number 9? Plus or minus 1, 2, 4, and 8. Everybody okay with that? Factors of 8 over factors of 1. Now we need to find the factors. And that means we're going to take numbers from this list and divide them out. -1. Remember, when you do this on Thursday, you may guess wrong a couple times, and that's okay. Just keep guessing. What do I do now? He was right. He guessed -1. It works. So what do I do now? Take the leftover. And factor it. This time it factors. What do I do if it doesn't factor? No, what do I do if this doesn't factor? We ran into it earlier. Quadratic formula. Okay, everybody good with this? Now, what's the sketch going to look like then? Well, we're going to have the dots on the number line. And where are the dots going to be? At -1, don't forget that first one that you guessed. At -4. And 2. Do you have any repeats or anything in this problem? So it's just a basic cube. Now, one caution. Part B, 9B. This is the sketch. This is 9C. It's done. It's beautiful. But part B says find the factors. Here are 2 of them. What is the third factor? Look at your picture. X plus 1. Don't forget about the number you guessed. It's part of the picture. It's part of the factorization.
Did you ever get a squared in one of your factors?
You can, and when that happens, that just means you bounce off at that point.
How would you get a squared?
If you, let's say we guessed -1, and then we ended up, when we divided, it didn't happen, but when we divided, we got this, which would factor as this. I have an x plus 1 that I guessed, and now I got another x plus 1 that came out of the factoring that I did.
Okay.
And then that just means when I plotted that point, it would be a bounce off instead of a pass through.
Okay.
All right, number 10. I changed this, so I need to change that. Okay, number 10. Change into vertex form. All right, let's get it done. Step 1. Divide everything by 3, including the y. Step 2. Move the 3 over. That 3 right there. I'm going to complete the square. So how do I figure out what I'm going to add to both sides? I take half of 4 squared. So half of 4 is 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. This is what? X minus 2 squared. This is y over 3 plus 1. Now you just gotta kind of put stuff back now. So we'll move the 1 back over. And then multiply everything by 3. And when I say everything, I mean on the outside of the parentheses and on the number. So your answer ends up being y equals 3 x minus 2 squared minus 3. And that's all you had to do. It just says change in the vertex form. Which are polynomials? If not, why not? So if it's a yes, then it's just a yes. But if it's a no, you have to explain. So does anybody see anything there that would be a no?
The first one.
The first one is a no. And why is the first one a no? X in the denominator. That's a no. X in the denominator. Anybody see any others that are no's? Which one? D. D is a no. Why is D? Dog.